Hi, I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Rich Baich, former SVP and CISO at AIG, a leading global insurance organization with operations in approximately 80 countries and jurisdictions. This interview is sponsored by SafeBreach, providers of a breach and attack simulation platform that identifies vulnerabilities in cybersecurity environments by mimicking the likely attack paths and techniques used by malicious actors. To learn more, visit safebreach.com. Rich, welcome. Great to have you on with us.
Great to be here.
So, Rich, you've been a CISO 3 times. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a fourth. You're one of the top CISOs in our industry. We've appreciated the connection with you in the past, and great to have you on today. We want to talk to you today about CISOs in the boardroom, how important cybersecurity is or isn't and should be, a topic that you know a lot about. So first, just tell us about your experience.
Yeah, sure. So I think when I reflect back, I've had the opportunity, like you said, to be a CISO several times from a corporate governance standpoint, but I've also had the opportunity to be a partner at Deloitte. So out there advising and seeing how other organizations either present to their boards or deal with cybersecurity. And I've also had the opportunity to do this from the vendor side of the house way back in the days of network security and McAfee when I ran their professional services. And then, in addition to that, obviously having the opportunity to do this at the national security level. So my perspectives come from, I think, a broad variety of how different organizations govern from a board of directors standpoint.
So, Rich, when it comes to cybersecurity, 2 things. One, in your opinion, what is the board's responsibility? And the other question would be, do you think that most boards are taking on that responsibility? And we're referring to, generally large enterprises.
Yeah, I'd say in the last 10 years, there's been a big focus for the boards to take on more responsibility. But boards are supposed to be focused on governance. Most board members are skilled risk managers. So it's a matter of translating that information to risk management for the boards. And then more importantly, it's for the boards to be actively involved. I mean, they should be hearing from their CISO minimally annually, but oftentimes quarterly, whether that's on the audit board, the technology board, or the full board.
So, Rich, in my opinion, CISOs belong in the boardroom. Now, I know everybody doesn't share that opinion, but either way, when a CISO is in the boardroom and they are being heard, what should they be saying? What should they be sharing? What should the board know about their posture to understand where they really stand?
My experience has been, and the feedback that I've gotten from many different board members is, provide them the information so that they can understand how effective the program is from a governance and a control effectiveness standpoint. So the reporting that CISOs should be doing is creating a framework or reporting package that demonstrates effective governance, maturation of the program, operating within defined risk parameters, and demonstrating that their controls are actually working.
So, Rich, where exactly does a CISO, security leaders, get the information they need in order to present to the board? Would it be security ratings, apps, or other tools? What exactly are they doing to prepare?
Yeah, so the most important thing is truth, right? How do you get truth to the board? And that information can come from, I'll call it, various technologies, various databases that then needs to be basically enriched with either intelligence or other corollary information. But one of the things that I have found that have been very helpful is using attack simulation tools to demonstrate the effectiveness of the controls. And more importantly, as you actually make changes, you can run the attack simulation to show the improvements.
So how often do you think, Rich, a board should speak to their CISO? Is it an annual meeting? Is it something where they feel obligated? You talk about governance and, they think that, it's important to maybe incorporate that into an annual report, or should there be more regularity?
Well, so first off, I think The board should have an educational meeting annually, where the CISO provides them an understanding of the threat, understanding of what has changed in the environment, really a general understanding of information security. So I think that's important. Then, when it comes to reporting on the program itself, at a minimum, it should be annually. And security really is about the culture of the organization. So, an organization that has a very strong culture of cybersecurity, you may report to the full board once or twice a year. But normally, you're at least talking to whatever committee might want to hear about it. Maybe the risk committee one quarter, the audit committee another quarter. If you have a technology committee, one of the other quarters, and then once or twice the full board.
So, what are the consequences, Rich, for a company, any company, who's not actively engaged with the CISO, who doesn't invite the CISO into the boardroom, who's not talking about cybersecurity as a real boardroom topic? That's not to say that maybe they're not reviewing the consequences of a previous attack, but if they're not connected to the CISO, what kind of problem is that?
Yeah, I think organizations that are not are missing out in understanding their overall risk management. Now, cyber is no longer an afterthought. I mean, every organization is connected to the internet, so there is a risk. There's an operational risk associated with doing business on the internet, and regulatory as well as industry leading practices. And as directors, they should want to ensure that the security program is documented and is measuring effectiveness and reporting that so that they can continue to do governance across all the spectrums. They understand financial statements and the risks to financial statements. Cyber needs to make sure that they understand cyber and the impact of cyber to the overall business.
So, Rich, Fortune 500 Global 2000 CISOs have told us over and over again, it's almost like a broken record. You need to be proactive, not reactive. Makes a lot of sense. These are some of the smartest people I've met. I've had the benefit of talking to many of them. Does meeting with the board, having that connection to the board, make it easier for a CISO to be proactive?
Yeah, I believe so, because when you're talking to the board, you're also talking to them about what could be happening, right? Almost from a risk modeling standpoint. So, for example, if there's geopolitical tensions in a particular area of the world and you have operations in that area, proactively, you might be saying, if this escalates, we already have a plan in place to mitigate the risk, depending on what type of business risk we want to assume in that environment. So that would be a great example of being proactive. So great example is the recent Russia-Ukraine, right? I think a lot of the CISOs that had, the board's ear were able to have those communications up either through the CIO, but to give the board the comfort level that we didn't wake up tomorrow and had to respond to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Anybody who is paying attention kind of had an action plan that they brushed off the shelf that they enacted as that conflict got to the more serious nature.
So, Rich, CISOs have just so much on their plate. And if I'm a CISO and I'm doing generally the right things, I have the right people in place, and there's just so much. There's security awareness training for end users. There's endpoint security. I have a SOC or I'm outsourcing. I don't have to, walk through that with you because there's just so much. How do I know if my security posture is good enough across all of that on my plate?
Great question. So effective measurement of your programming, your control effectiveness is critical. Organizations all have policies, they all have standards, they all have operating procedures, they all have technologies that are enabled. But where our opportunity in the industry is okay, how do we make sure that that's being effective? You have, like you said, you have outside security scorecard ratings that are looking at specific things. You have abilities to pull down dashboards from technology to ensure that it's deployed across your environment, correlating with information such as your asset management. But again, from my standpoint, what I've found to be very valuable here in the last, kind of 3 to 4 years is using simulation, and whether that be attack simulation or risk simulation, that allows me to say, if I take these actions, what happens? Or if I know my environment and I'm able to take in information, what can I do? And let me give you a real example, because I think this is an important question. For example, with the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, a tremendous amount of information was shared from government and non-government organizations that organizations were able to digest to understand what type of techniques would be deployed. If you understood your environment and your assets in that particular area of conflict, you could then take all of your known vulnerabilities, risks, and threats in that area, combine it, enrich it with that threat intelligence, and then simulate through an attack simulation or something else about what is the probability of you falling victim based on all the information that was provided externally around the threat, combined with what you know in your own environment. And you could come up and say, hey, we have a 90% probability that if we were attacked by all these known threat intelligence feeds that we got, that we would be successfully be able to defend against it. So that's a very proactive approach of being proactive, but with threat intelligence enriched simulation to demonstrate the effectiveness and then provide that information back to the board.
So Rich, before we let you go today, I want to look back and look ahead, and you're just such a great source for that. I remember maybe 5-6 years ago, I was writing for Forbes and CISO. You were one of my sources, and it was great to rely on you for a really good quote when I needed one to help put things in perspective for people. We launched our own media property. We've followed each other. Now, 5-6 years later, are things any better? Are they getting better? Is the job any easier for the CISO? Are the ransomware attacks leveling off? Are they intensifying? Just exactly how hard is it to be a CISO in a large enterprise now compared to 5 or even 10 years ago?
We have matured in our practices, but the bad actors have also matured, and we've obviously increased the threat considerably, because now we have nation states who can spend $1 billion coming up with unique types of exploitations. But specifically to being a CISO, I think people should be motivated to be a CISO because they're mission oriented. They have a desire to help the organization understand their risk, prioritize their actions, and make it as difficult as possible for an organization to fall victim. But more importantly, I think the CISO role has moved to one of enablement, right? It's no longer just saying you can't do this. It's a matter of saying, how can we do this and securely within our cultural risk appetite? I have found that an organization decides what level of security they get by the culture that they embrace as it relates to risk management associated with the information security and the cyber domains. So I'm still excited, about the CISO role. I encourage people to strive to become CISOs because it is a absolutely rewarding job, especially if you have a mission passion behind what you're doing. And more importantly, I think there are a lot of organizations that are seeing more and more value with CISOs that are as much technical, but also spending the time to understand the business and the mission of the organization so that they can actually help them make the best decisions. The best CISOs, I think, do the following. They know what information to get. They get it in a very timely fashion. And then they present that information after performing all the cyber ninja stuff that we do, so that senior leadership can make the best decisions based on the facts and the truth of their operational environment as they continue to obviously perform their function, regardless if you're in the public or private sector.
Well, Rich, undoubtedly you are one of the best, and thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
This interview is sponsored by SafeBreach, providers of a breach and attack simulation platform that identifies vulnerabilities in cybersecurity environments by mimicking the likely attack paths and techniques used by malicious actors. To learn more, visit safebreach.com. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.